October 5. 1 Kings 8. Ephesians 5. Ezekiel 38. Psalm 89. Chapters 38 and 39 of Ezekiel are among the most difficult chapters in the entire book. In many ways, they stand apart from what comes before and after. Perhaps the simplest explanation is the following. Chapters 40 through 48 are so much later than most of the book, the 25th year of exile, chapter 40 verse 1, that they are almost like an appendix to the rest of the visions and oracles. If so, then chapters 38 and 39 must be seen as a conclusion to the preceding 37 chapters, but not necessarily as a bridge to chapters 40 through 48. Precisely how this prophecy against Gog serves as a conclusion to all that comes before it in Ezekiel depends very much on how these two chapters are interpreted. Even to catalog the possibilities would turn these brief meditations into a commentary, so I must largely restrict myself to some tentative conclusions. It cannot have escaped notice that in several previous chapters I chose not to comment on certain sections. In part, this was nothing more than selectivity based on my restricted space. But in part, these passages belong to the same genus, and can usefully be thought about together. For instance, chapter 37, verses 25 through 28, anticipates the time when Israel, under God's servant David, will live in the land forever, and David my servant will be their prince forever. God's sanctuary is among them forever. Such language must either be taken at face value, a temple in Jerusalem with a Davidic king, the throne and temple enduring forever, or it points beyond itself. For reasons that will become clearer, I am inclined to think that these and similar prophecies look forward to the glorious messianic future, but are largely cast in terms of the familiar categories of the Old Covenant. These same categories, the New Testament writers insist, have a predictive function fulfilled in Jesus, the Son of David, and all that he brings. Along similar lines, Ezekiel chapter 38 begins by denouncing Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, verse 3. The suggestion that these names refer to Moscow and Tobolsk is without linguistic merit. The pair of names appears elsewhere. Genesis chapter 10 verse 2, 1 Chronicles chapter 1 verse 5, and Ezekiel chapter 27 verse 13 and chapter 32 verse 26, and refers to the known tribes of Moskoi and Tibarenoi. Gog is perhaps to be identified with Gyges, king of Lydia, called Gugu in some ancient records. More importantly, this anticipated horde of opponents to God's people comes from the far north, chapter 38 verse 6, which is the direction from which the worst of Israel's foes always came. The chapter ends in apocalyptic imagery, verses 18 through 23, which begins to make the scene feel like an idealized and final outbreak against the people of God, in which God vindicates his name and his cause. Thus, all previous outbreaks anticipate and are concluded by this final apocalyptic struggle.